Sir, hold it right there. We need to see some identification.
Why's that?
We have information that you may be in this country unlawfully. We need to verify your status.
Gentlemen, this must be a mistake. It's not possible to be a judge without being a U.S. citizen.
Cut the
Two IC agents thought they were sending a message. They had a target, a plan, and the confidence that comes from years of operating without consequences. But when they stopped United States District Judge Henry Louis Chambers Jr. on the steps of his own courthouse and demanded he prove his citizenship, they set in motion a chain of events that would end with both agents in federal prison, their supervisors terminated, and a conspiracy conviction that would reshape how federal agencies interact with the judiciary. Chambers wasn't just any target. He was a 16-year federal judge, former U.S. attorney, and the grandson of a Tuskegee airman scheduled to preside over a civil rights case against IC that very morning. His judicial robe was draped over his arm. His portrait hung in the lobby 50 feet away. Agent Derek Fawcett said, "You're coming with us." He reached for the judge's arm. The courthouse security cameras captured everything. So did the U.S. Marshals sprinting down the steps. The investigation would reveal it wasn't a mistake. It was witness intimidation. The text would prove it. Let's see how he rules after we check his papers on his own steps. 15 years federal prison, 12 years for his partner, $8.5 million in settlement, and a federal judge who returned to his courtroom that afternoon to do exactly what he'd done for 16 years, delivered justice to those who thought they were above it. The Richard B. Russell Federal Building rose over Spring Street in downtown Atlanta. Granite steps, bronze doors, the architecture of federal authority. Judge Chambers had climbed these steps nearly every workday for 16 years. His courtroom waited on the 7th floor, his chambers on the 8th. His docket for the day included a 9 a.m. hearing. A civil rights case alleging IC agents had violated the constitutional rights of legal residents during enforcement operations. Wednesday morning, 8:14 a.m., Chambers walked from the judicial parking lot toward the main entrance. Charcoal three-piece suit, silver tie, judicial robe draped over his arm. He preferred to carry it rather than change in chambers. The two agents had positioned themselves near the top of the steps, waiting. They stepped into his path as he approached. "Sir, hold it right there. We need to see some identification." Chambers stopped. 16 years on the bench had taught him to assess situations quickly. 7 years as U.S. attorney had taught him to recognize when something was wrong. "Why is that?" "We have information that you may be in this country unlawfully. We need to verify your status." Chambers looked at the agent Derek Fawcett, according to badge visible on his tactical vest. Then at the second agent. Then at the courthouse entrance where U.S. Marshals stood at their posts. He gestured the robe over his arm. "Gentlemen, this must be a mistake. It's not possible to be a judge without being a U.S. citizen." Fawcett's expression didn't change. "Cut the 'you're coming with us' until we confirm your identity." Above the entrance, courthouse security cameras recorded everything. At the doors, Deputy U.S. Marshal Taryn Brooks had noticed the confrontation and was already moving. Chambers didn't move. "I am United States District Judge Henry Louis Chambers Jr. I have presided over this courthouse for 16 years. My courtroom is on the 7th floor. My chambers are on the 8th. And in 45 minutes, I'm scheduled to hear a civil rights case involving your agency." Fawcett reached for his arm. "That's convenient. Turn around. Remove your hand from my person." Chambers' voice carried the authority of a man who had sentenced violent criminals, held attorneys in contempt, and commanded courtrooms where the stakes were measured in decades. "I am warning you. Is that a threat? It's a statement of law. Assault on a federal judicial officer is a felony. You are currently committing one." Fawcett's partner, Agent William Pratt, had positioned himself to block any retreat down the steps. His body cam was active, so was Fawcett's. The courthouse security system captured everything from above. For the record, Chambers said clearly, "I am identifying myself as United States District Judge Henry Louis Chambers Jr. My judicial credentials are in my briefcase. My portrait hangs in this courthouse lobby. My biography is on the court's public website. Anyone can claim to be a judge. I'm not claiming. I'm informing you of facts you can verify in 30 seconds. He pointed to the entrance. "Those are U.S. Marshals. They provide my security. Ask them who I am." Fawcett didn't look toward the entrance. "We'll verify at the field office. You'll verify here or you'll explain to a federal grand jury why you refuse to confirm the identity of a sitting judge 50 feet from his own courtroom. Attorneys and court staff had begun ascending the steps for the morning session. They slowed as they passed the confrontation. One attorney, a regular in Chambers' courtroom, stopped entirely. That's Judge Chambers. What are you doing? Fawcett turned his head. Keep moving. Federal business. Federal business. He's a federal judge. More voices now. Recognition spreading to the morning arrivals. That's Judge Chambers. Why are they stopping him? What's happening? Deputy Marshal Brooks was descending the steps at speed. His hand was on his radio. Fawcett grabbed Chambers' arm and attempted to turn him around. You're being detained for identity verification. Chambers didn't resist, didn't struggle, simply stood still while the agent's hand closed on his bicep. You have just committed assault on a federal judicial officer. That's a felony under 18 U.S.C. Section 111. Your body cam is recording. The courthouse cameras are recording. Multiple witnesses are present. Turn around. I will not. Brooks reached them, breathing hard. Stop. That is a federal judge. Stand down. Fawcett's grip remained. We have information. I don't care what information you have. That man is United States District Judge Henry Louis Chambers. Jr.'s portrait is in the lobby. His name is on his courtroom door. Release him immediately. Credit step back. The doubt that Fawcett refused to acknowledge was written across his face. Derek, maybe we should shut up. Chambers looked at Brooks. Marshal, I want these agents' names, badge numbers, and supervisor contact information. They have 10 seconds to comply before I direct you to arrest them both. The color drained from Fawcett's face. His hand released the judge's arm. Chief Judge Margaret Holloway arrived at 8:23 a.m. She had been briefed by phone while still in her vehicle. She assessed the scene in seconds, her colleague adjusting his suit. 2 IC agents flanked by marshals. A crowd of attorneys and staff watching from the steps. I am Chief Judge Holloway. I oversee this district. She addressed Fawcett directly. You detained my colleague on the steps of his own courthouse. Explain. We received information. What information? From whom? That's confidential. Nothing is confidential when you assault a federal judge. I want your supervisor here in 30 minutes. If that doesn't happen, I'm issuing bench warrants. Chambers had retrieved his phone. His calls went out in sequence. First, his law clerk. Delay the morning hearing. Second, the U.S. Attorney's Office. Incident involving judicial officer. Third, FBI Atlanta. Civil rights violation in progress. Fourth, DOJ Inspector General. Federal agents targeting judge assigned a case against their agency. The fourth call carried implications the others didn't. Targeting a judge before a hearing wasn't just assault. It was obstruction, witness intimidation, conspiracy. Fawcett and Pratt were escorted to the marshal's office. Their phones were secured. Their body cam footage was flagged for preservation. The IC regional director arrived at 8:51 a.m., 29 minutes after Holloway's demand. His face showed the particular strain of someone whose morning had just become a career crisis. Your Honor, I apologize for savior apologies. I want to know why 2 of your agents accosted Judge Chambers on these steps. I want to know what information they claim to have. And I want to know who authorized this operation. I'm still gathering facts. Gather them quickly. The FBI is opening an investigation. The Inspector General has been notified. Whatever happened here, it happened on camera in front of witnesses to a judge who was 45 minutes from hearing a case against your agency. The regional director's face shifted as the implications registered. The case against, you're saying this might be related to. I'm saying the timing demands scrutiny. I'm saying your agent's phones need to be examined. I'm saying this has the appearance of witness intimidation. And if that's what it was, people are going to prison. Chambers stood at the edge of the conversation. His robe still hung over his arm. His morning had been disrupted, but not destroyed. I intend to recuse myself from the civil rights case, he said quietly. The appearance of conflict is now unavoidable. Holloway nodded. I'll assign it to Judge Patterson. But Henry, I know this isn't over. This is just beginning. The courthouse security footage was preserved within the hour. The body cam recordings were secured by FBI within 2 hours. The agents' phones were subpoenaed by end of day. The text message that would define the case was discovered that evening. Let's see how he rules after we check his papers on his own steps. Sent at 7:43 a.m., 31 minutes before the confrontation. It wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. The investigation revealed what the confrontation had suggested. Derek Fawcett and William Pratt had known exactly who Judge Chambers was. They had researched his docket. They had identified the civil rights case. They had planned the encounter specifically to intimidate him before his ruling. The text messages told the story. 7:31 a.m., Fawcett to Pratt, target confirmed. Walking from judicial lot. 7:38 a.m., Pratt to Fawcett. He's carrying his robe. Perfect. 7:43 a.m., Fawcett to colleague. Let's see how he rules after we check his papers on his own steps. 7:52 a.m., Fawcett to supervisor. Moving to intercept. The supervisor, Agent Supervisory Special Agent Marcus Webb, had replied with a single word, understood. Webb had been aware of the plan. He had not stopped it. 3 other supervisors had been copied on communications discussing the operation. None had intervened. The anonymous tip was traced within 48 hours. A burner phone purchased near the IC field office. Cell tower data placed the purchase within 200 feet of the building's entrance. The tip had originated from within the agency, created specifically to provide pretext for an encounter that was never about immigration enforcement. Fawcett's personnel file revealed the pattern. 11 prior complaints for targeting minority professionals. 8 dismissed. 3 resulted in reprimands. No suspensions. His stop record showed systematic focus on attorneys, judges, and court personnel. The people connected to cases his agency wanted to influence. Pratt had participated in 7 such operations. His cooperation with investigators began within days of the incident. His testimony would be essential. His career was still over. The digital forensics recovered deleted communications spanning 18 months. Fawcett had coordinated visibility operations targeting judges in 3 other districts. Cases where IC was a defendant, cases where rulings might go against the agency. This was an isolated misconduct. It was a pattern of judicial intimidation operating under the cover of immigration enforcement. The FBI's analysis concluded that Fawcett had led a coordinated effort to influence federal proceedings through intimidation. His supervisors had enabled it through approval, silence, or willful blindness. Judge Chambers provided testimony over 2 days. He described the encounter with a precision that 16 years of judicial writing had honed. They knew who I was. They knew what case I was hearing. They planned specifically to intimidate me before I took the bench. The federal grand jury convened 7 weeks after the incident. Indictments: conspiracy to obstruct justice, intimidation of federal judge, assault on a judicial officer, deprivation of rights under color of law. Fawcett, Pratt, Supervisor Webb, 2 additional supervisors who had been aware of the plan. All 5 would face trial. The trial was held in Washington, D.C. Every judge in the Northern District of Georgia had recused themselves. The conflict was too direct. The relationships too close. Judge Chambers testified wearing his judicial robes, the same robes he had carried that morning. I identified myself as a United States District Judge. I showed them the robe. I pointed to the courthouse entrance. I offered multiple forms of verification. What was Agent Fawcett's response? He said, "Cut the "you're coming with us." The courthouse footage played. The jury watched a silver-haired federal judge in a 3-piece suit, judicial robe over his arm, stopped on the steps of his own courthouse. Anyone can claim to be a judge. The text messages were displayed. Let's see how he rules after we check his papers on his own steps. The prosecution didn't need lengthy arguments. The evidence spoke. Pratt testified under his cooperation agreement. He described the planning, the target selection, the specific intent to send a message before the civil rights hearing. Did you believe this was legitimate immigration enforcement? No. What did you believe it was? Intimidation. The defense argued good faith, following orders, standard procedure. The prosecutor's response was brief. Standard procedure doesn't include texting colleagues about checking a judge's papers before his ruling. Standard procedure doesn't include manufacturing anonymous tips to create pretext. Standard procedure doesn't include assaulting a judicial officer on his own courthouse steps because you don't like how he might rule. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty, all counts. Fawcett, guilty, all counts. Webb, guilty, reduced charges. Pratt, 2 other supervisors. Sentencing followed 8 weeks later. Fawcett, 15 years federal prison, enhanced for targeting a judicial officer, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and leadership role in the scheme. Webb, 10 years supervisory responsibility. Pratt, 7 years. Cooperation had reduced, but not eliminated his exposure. The 2 additional supervisors received 4 years each. All 5 led from the courtroom in handcuffs. The civil settlement was announced 3 months after sentencing. The Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay $8.5 million rather than face extended litigation that would expose the full scope of the intimidation campaign. Judge Chambers directed the entire amount to establish the Chambers Center for Constitutional Justice, providing legal defense for victims of federal overreach. I don't need the money. The system that failed needs reform. This is how I can contribute to that reform. The IC regional director was demoted and transferred. 3 additional supervisors were forced to resign. The entire chain of command that had enabled Fawcett's operations was dismantled. The Secretary of Homeland Security issued a public apology, not a press release. A formal statement read at a press conference acknowledging that agents had targeted a federal judge in an attempt to influence judicial proceedings. The civil rights case Judge Chambers had been scheduled to hear proceeded under Judge Patterson. The plaintiffs prevailed. The settlement, $147 million, established new policies for IC operations in the Northern District. Congress invited Chambers to testify on immigration enforcement reform. His testimony lasted 3 hours. His recommendation became the foundation for legislation requiring judicial notification when federal agents operate near courthouses. The courthouse implemented new protocols. ICE operations within 500 feet of judicial facilities required advanced coordination with the U.S. Marshals Service. Violations triggered automatic review. Chambers returned to his bench. Same courtroom, same docket, same commitment to the Constitution. He had served for 16 years. His grandfather's portrait in Tuskegee Airman uniform was installed in the courthouse lobby. 78 combat missions over Europe. 5 generations of service to a country that sometimes forgot who its servants were. The portrait hung alongside Judge Chambers' own grandfather and grandson, pilot and jurist, both proving citizenship through service rather than papers. Judge Chambers climbed the courthouse steps the morning after the verdict. Same time, same route, same robe draped over his arm. Deputy Marshal Brooks met him at the entrance. Morning, Judge. Morning, Terrence. Quiet day planning to be. The normally was intentional. 16 years of climbing these steps. Nothing had changed that needed to change. His courtroom waited on the 7th floor. A full docket. Criminal sentencing at 9 a.m. civil motion hearing at 10:30. The ordinary business of federal justice. His law clerk had organized the files. His bailiff had prepared the courtroom. The machinery of the judiciary continued. He took the bench at 8:58 a.m. This court is now in session. The words he had spoken thousands of times. The authority that no agent could diminish. The defendant in the morning's sentencing, a man convicted of fraud, stood before him. The case had nothing to do with IC, nothing to do with the confrontation on the steps. Chambers delivered the sentence, explained the reasoning, applied the guidelines with the same precision he had always applied. Justice continued. His wife, Patricia, watched the news coverage that evening. The verdict, the sentences, the aftermath. How do you feel? I feel like go to work tomorrow. That's it. That's enough. The system worked. Not quickly, not painlessly, but it worked. He looked at the photograph on his desk. His grandfather in uniform. His father in a courtroom. 5 generations of Chambers men serving a country that had required each of them to prove in their own way that they belonged. Grandpa flew 78 missions over Europe. Came home to segregation. Never complained. Just kept serving. He set the photograph down. I can climb courthouse steps. Derek Fawcett served 12 years of his 15-year sentence at a federal facility in Pennsylvania. denied parole twice, his appeals exhausted, his law enforcement career a cautionary tale. William Pratt completed his 7 years, testified at 4 subsequent trials involving federal misconduct. His cooperation continued. His ability to work in law enforcement did not. Marcus Webb served 8 years. The supervisor who had approved the operation discovered that understood was an admission, not a defense. The Chambers Center for Constitutional Justice opened 18 months after the settlement. Legal aid for victims of federal overreach. Training programs for attorneys handling civil rights cases. A legacy built from accountability. Judge Chambers was nominated for the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals 2 years after the incident. The confirmation hearing included questions about the confrontation. Judge Chambers, how did the incident affect your view of federal law enforcement? It reinforced what I've always known. Most federal agents serve honorably. Some do not. The system must distinguish between them. When it fails to, this is what happens. He was confirmed. Same unanimous vote as his original appointment. Same recognition of qualifications that had never depended on the color of his skin. The Northern District of Georgia updated its judicial security protocols. The reforms became models for districts nationwide. His grandfather's portrait remained in the lobby. Tuskegee Airman 78 missions. A man who had proven his citizenship in the skies over Europe. Judge Chambers' portrait hung beside it. 16 years on the bench. A man who had proven his citizenship on the steps of his own courthouse. The courthouse steps looked the same as they did that Wednesday morning. Granite worn smooth by decades of footsteps. The entrance to federal justice. Judge Chambers still climbs them, circuit court duties now, but he returns to the district courthouse for ceremonies, for mentoring, for the connection to the building where he served for 16 years. The security cameras still record. The marshals still stand post. The ordinary machinery of justice continues. His speech on the day of his return went viral, not because of anger, because of clarity. The courthouse steps are sacred ground. They represent equal justice under law. No one is above the law, and no one is beneath its protection. The words hung in the courtroom where he had delivered thousands of rulings where justice had been administered regardless of wealth or status or color. I was stopped on these steps because of assumptions. Assumptions about who belongs in positions of authority. Assumptions about who can be a federal judge. Assumptions that 5 generations of service to this country somehow don't count. He paused. Those assumptions sent 2 agents to federal prison. They ended careers. They cost millions of dollars, and they proved something important. He looked at the courtroom, at the attorneys, at the staff, at the faces that had watched the footage and followed the trial. The system works slowly, imperfectly, but it works not because powerful people are protected, because the law protects everyone. The case file remains in federal databases. Case number 2024, County Route 0000891. Subject conspiracy to obstruct justice. Intimidation of federal judicial officer. Location Richard B. Russell Federal Building, Atlanta, Georgia. Outcome, conviction, incarceration, reform, principle established. Courthouse steps are sacred ground. Federal judges are constitutional officers. In some encounters, no matter how carefully planned, and with handcuffs on the wrong people, Judge Henry Louis Chambers Jr. proved that principle the only way available. By standing still, by documenting everything, by returning to his bench, by continuing to serve, the steps remain. The justice continues. Some things don't change. Some things shouldn't have.